There are a few dozen videos in each part of this course. Now you can use the playlist and watch one after the other, and that works pretty well. But if you want a little clue as to what's coming in this next part of the course, watch this video. This one's about part 3, all about VLANs and spanning tree. In this video, I'll give you an overview of the part, then I'll talk about the instructional videos, then the review and retrieval practice videos to let you practice those things, and we'll close with a quick discussion of how do you find this content easily with the playlist. All right, let's do it. Before talking about individual videos, here's the big picture. In the books, Volume 1, there are 7 parts with these topics, and then in Volume 2, 6 more parts with these. So for this video course, I followed that same part outline, and we're talking about part 3 overall, which is about VLANs and rapid spanning tree protocol. Then inside that part in the books, and then therefore in the video course, there are 3 chapters basically. The first one's on Ethernet virtual LANs, both the concepts and config. Then a second chapter that's concepts only with spanning tree, and then we get into the configuration specifically for configuring rapid spanning tree and Ether channel and some other optional features. First, for style. The instructional videos, I purposefully make them different than how I do things in the book. I purposefully use different examples. I'll put things in a different order. I'll change the explanations. Why? So that when you read the book and then watch the video, or vice versa, you learn something new. Maybe something that didn't quite make sense in one makes sense in the other. All right, so I do that on purpose, but I'll follow the same outline as the book. And I use the same scope. So if you've got a major section in the book, I'll try to have a video or a couple of videos covering that and make it so that you can easily move between the two. All right, so I make frequent reference there. So in this case, in part 3 of Volume 1, Volume 1, Chapter 8 is about implementing Ethernet virtual LANs. There's a first major section called VLAN concepts. I've got one video about it, switching with VLANs and VLAN trunks. It's easy to find in the playlist. There's the thumbnail. But in the second major section on VLAN and trunk config, there's a lot there. So I broke it up actually into 4 different videos. The first one is about configuring VLANs and access ports. And then another on VLAN trunks. And those are the 2 most important of the 4 you see in here. But there are a couple of ancillary topics. One's about VLAN trunking protocol, or VTP. We try to ignore it for CCNA, but you still need to pay a little bit of attention to it, so don't forget to pay a little attention to it. And then for voice ports, the ports that are connected from a switch to an IP phone and then to, say, a PC, how to deal with those. Then for the third section, we're back to one video to match one major section of the chapter, VLAN and trunk troubleshooting. We've got a video on that. Then moving up to Chapter 9 from the current edition of Volume 1, there's a first major section on the basics of both spanning tree and its faster, newer, rapid spanning tree, and we've got one matching video on that. There's another section that drills down specifically on spanning tree. We've got one on that, and a third section that drills down on rapid spanning tree and the improvements made there. We've got one video on that, and as you might guess, age-old spanning tree, it was slower to converge, and rapid spanning tree, what makes it rapid, or why is it rapid? So that convergence is much faster. But that chapter is supposed to be about concepts, and it has a 4th section, and those concepts are about some optional spanning tree features. And I don't have any videos in the playlist associated with Chapter 9. So here's how I deviated from my norm here. I decided to take these optional features and put the videos in Chapter 10 in the playlist, all right? So let me flip over and talk about Chapter 10 and stay tuned for those. So in Chapter 10, it's about spanning tree configuration, both for spanning tree, rapid spanning tree, and for Ether channel. So there is a first major section. It's about rapid spanning tree protocol configuration. We have a video for that, including how to configure the root switch and change the priorities and change the interface costs. That's pretty straightforward spanning tree. You got to learn it, but it matches up to the concepts. And then there are a bunch of videos related to these optional spanning tree features that I just mentioned. So let's drill down on that next. So port fast is an optional feature. It's hugely important in real life. You should definitely pay attention to that video. Now in the books, I've got the concepts in chapter 9 and the config in chapter 10. So for the video, I said, that's silly. I put them together in this one video. Then there are 4 other topics that I wish Cisco hadn't gone there for CCNA, but here they are. BPDU guard, root guard, BPDU filter, and loop guard. So I've got a video on each of those topics, both concept and config, back in the book. Chapter 9 has the concept, chapter 10 has the config, but for the video course, I collected each topic as a self-contained video, so 4 separate videos on those. And then a hugely important topic, a video on it, Ether channel. So of these 6 optional STP features, port fast, very important. Ether channel, very important. These top 2, medium important, and the bottom 2, less important in terms of real life. If you're using the CCNA playlist, you'll see review and retrieval practice videos interleaved between these instructional videos. So let me tell you about those. Back in Volume 1, Chapter 8, the VLAN and VLAN trunking chapter, we've got those same sections. And for Section 1 about VLAN concepts, we have some videos appropriate for reviewing concepts. We have a mind map exercise where you start with the word VLAN and remember as many terms as you can from that first section. And then we have an interview review exercise where I pose some questions to you about VLANs and VLAN trunks. I give you time to answer them, and then I walk through how I would evaluate someone who's answering those interview questions. Then in the VLAN and trunk config section, we have a variety of labs. We've got intro and review videos related to a lab at my blog about basic VLAN config, another lab at my blog about VLAN trunking. I turn it into a kind of a puzzle. How do you figure out which VLAN trunking config options to use? And so for those, the lab exercises at my blog, but these intro and review videos make it a richer experience if you want to watch those. Then I've got an ad hoc lab for dealing with VTP. Ad hoc labs, in my case, are labs that exist in video form only. There's no matching blog page. So you can practice VTP a bit. Then in the section on troubleshooting these same topics, I've got another ad hoc lab video about troubleshooting VLANs and trunks. And then finally, I'll close it out with a mind map exercise that covers the whole chapter so you can review all the terminology from that chapter. Then moving on to chapter 9 on spanning tree protocol concepts, we've got a couple more of these interview review exercises where they're both the same style, but it's 2 different sets of particulars. So you can analyze what happens with spanning tree in 2 different networks. And it's, again, like an interview. I give you some questions and a scenario, and then I'll tell you how I would evaluate your answers if you were to answer in a technical interview. For the second section, I don't have any specific exercises, but the third section on RSTP, there's another ad hoc lab, that is, it's self-contained in the video, that compares spanning tree section 2 to rapid spanning tree in section 3. So you can think of this lab as applying to both of those sections. Then we get to chapter 10 where I kind of pulled in all those small topics. So we've got one exercise that's a config lab related to the core RSTP config. There is a lab intro video, but no lab review video. I didn't really think it was necessary in this case. And then for all those optional STP features, well, I've got different exercises, 3 different interview review exercises, and 2 mind map exercises related to those. Whew, sounds like a lot, but there's even one more. I made a big lab at the end. So basically I thought, hey, what would I have you do if I wanted you to practice everything from part 3? So that's the big VLAN and RSTP exercise number 1. You configure VLANs and access ports in this design. You configure switch-to-switch trunks in this design. You configure this pair of links to be in an Ether channel. And then you configure to optimize spanning tree operations here as well. It's all written up on a blog page, and there's a lab intro and lab review video to go along with that as well. The easiest and best way to find these videos is to use the CCNA course playlist. You can use that link directly. You can use this QR code, or you can just go to the channel Network Upskill and look for the free CCNA course playlist. Now, of particular importance, it interleaves the instruction and review videos in the correct order. All right, so if you're like, oh, which ones do I use when? Just find the playlist and scroll down. It's a long playlist, but it is in the correct order. And just to make sure that's clear, note that I've kind of color-coded the thumbnails. The deep blue backgrounds are the teaching or instructional videos, and the mostly white backgrounds are the review videos. I've even put the volume and chapter numbers in the thumbnails. Notice these are all volume 1, chapter 11. The next ones over here are volume 1, chapter 12. And if you keep going down the list, in this case, you'd see volume 1, chapter 13 and 14 and 15 and so on. So you can scroll down and get confirmation of where you are. You can scroll around and find the chapter you're working on right now and open up the next video to watch. Hope you found this part intro useful. If you want to know more about that playlist I just told you about, click on the left and you'll get to a video that tells you more about it. If you want to know more about this part, there's a part review video that tells you how to review everything you learned in this part. You may not want it now, you may want it at the end of the part, but the link to that is over on the right. Hey, I'll see you in the next video.